Natalie, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
The film is absolutely beautiful and, exactly the sort of film that I think needs to be seen right now and moving forward, because obviously it's not a new subject. And it's probably not a subject that's going to be going away anytime soon. But this was a different, a different spin on the sorts of stories that we've been hearing for years and years. And so my first question is, the film is the end result of a long journey, and it was an evolution that you talk about in the film, where it started as one thing and it became more and bigger. Can you kind of walk us through that journey and the evolution of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I started this, it was originally going to be like a 2 to 3 minute, like nothing. And when I say nothing, it was just more like celebrating my weight loss and just like a quick video to be like, hey, thanks everybody for
Right.
supporting me. And like I've been doing this, it's cool, But as we all know, in 2020, when the world shut down, it like it made everyone kind of rethink a lot of things, myself
Right.
included. And I was doing these different challenges. I was like, I'm gonna run a marathon, and then I wanted to run a 50 miler. And then when COVID happened and everything was shut down, I was just kind of like, it's fine. We have enough footage. I think running a marathon is actually a great feat for anybody, especially a plus size Black woman. And then when everything with like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, that's what really started up in my heart. Of course, there's been a lot of stuff happening before that, but that's what really made me be like, enough is enough.
Mhm.
That I decided to just take a completely different route with this film, with my running journey, with everything. And to this day, it's the greatest accomplishment I've ever done in my life. Like walking at the end of that film was 100% like one of the best days. Very tiring, but one of the best days of my life.
I mean, the longest race I've ever run is a 10K. So I can't imagine what doing 50 miles is like. Like what sort of, like, how long did you prep for it? Like what sort of preparation did you put in?
Yeah, so since it was my first 50 miler, I followed a running plan that I'd like found online. And I didn't have there's a run crew that I feature, a couple, but Bronx Soul is the run crew that I currently still run with. And I found them during quarantine. They were one of the only run crews still out there socially distanced running. And maybe there were like 4 or 5 people showing up. So I actually thought it was a small run crew. But then, as life has gotten back to normal, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 50, 60, 70 people in this group. But nobody was showing up during quarantine. So I met people through that I was able to run with. And then there were still socially distanced races happening. So the farthest I ran before that was I did it was like 33 miles. We ran around what is it called? Like the outline of Manhattan. I forget what
Okay.
you call it, but like I ran around Manhattan, like the whole thing, and it was 33 miles in a race. I was like, whatever they called it, I don't remember, but that was the longest race I ran. And I was like, well, let's hope we can get to 50.
It's even just like in the video, as someone who doesn't live in New York, but like all the hot spots that you like, I'm like, I recognize that place and I recognize that place. And then like at a certain point I'm like, good God, they really did just like run over the entire island. Like,
Yes.
so you're an actress, you're a singer, but were you an activist before taking on this project?
So I would say I was an activist, like a keyboard one, like definitely online, posted memes, posted, actual stuff, but I was very scared to actually go out on the street. And I always would think, this might sound cliche, but I would always think of like Martin Luther King Jr. and, my pastor from one of my churches. He's passed away now, but like he had a picture of him and Martin Luther King Jr. together and like out on the streets with him and all this stuff. And I was like, what an amazing story to tell people. Like, I actually was on the streets with MLK. I actually like marched for justice. Like the changes you see happening are because I actually went on the streets. And after George Floyd passed away, I just was like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't watch people be on these streets and I'm just sitting in my apartment hiding, because at that point we also didn't know if the world was going to end. So I was just like,
Right.
the world's going to end. I'm going to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
So I just was on the streets every day, all day. And I like completely did a 180 and just went hardcore, not only into like being on the streets, but actually like showing up to, because it's about community also. So like helping people in the community, like doing trash days where we pick up trash and like all of this stuff. So that is when I actually became like, I'm going to be on the streets, not just a keyboard activist is what I call them.
Right.
I'm going to actually show up places and help people.
I like that. It kind of, it starts as a protest, and it's really just community building after that. It's, this is our stated goal, but then it has all these ramifications that are positive in our community. There's a line in the film where someone says, we're family members of a racial pandemic. And that really struck an emotional chord with me as someone who isn't part of that family. What was it like for you to be out there on the streets with family members of people who have died at the hands of police brutality?
That was actually like the most emotional part for me because, you see it on the news, you see it on TV, like we all know about it, but to actually be standing beside someone who's like, I lost my cousin, I lost my brother, I lost my son. It it was actually too overwhelming for me. And I just was like, oh my gosh, because I've seen people at marches before and I've had them, but to like actually be like, I was physically tired from running, and then to be there with them, I was like, I not only can't give up because they're literally standing here with me, but I can't give up because I want this story to like go across places and people see that like you can do this, and their lives did matter and they still do matter. But it was very, very heartbreaking.
Black Lives Matter, I feel like, was the first thing that got people out of their homes after the initial lockdown, kind of mid 2020. What challenges did you face organizing this event, both from a pandemic perspective, and then in the film there are several people who talk about just the regular challenges of being Black
Mhm.
and trying to do everyday stuff. So like, what challenges did you face putting the project together?
um it was very hard. But everybody was super supportive, which was helpful. But at that time, like I always say, like, I wish I could have done this run now, because I'm like, I wasn't really established in the activism world all the way. So like people kind of knew, like, I would go to protests and be like, I'm gonna run 50 miles for justice. And people are like, what is this girl talking about? Like, because I say it out loud and it sounds crazy. People are like looking at me, this plus size Black woman, like, okay, and I'm like messaging people like on Instagram, just, cold calling, whatever you want to call it. Like, can you please show up? Can you help me get in contact with family members? And then I'm messaging other cities, and eventually once I got a core group of people together, with the other cities joining. And then when I was able to get people here in town, I really started targeting people based on their locations and just trying to connect with people who I had marched with, because when they hear run, they think if I'm not running and I can't be a part of it. But we had people walk, bike, skateboard, roller, it was everything. And that's what I just kept trying to tell people, like, even if you can only do like 5 seconds of it, just please show up, And I remember waking up that day scared. Like, I mean, I put the call out, people said they're going to be there. I just have to trust them. And at every single stop, somebody was there waiting for us, which also was another like overwhelming feeling, that so many people, because like you put this all together, and then because I'm running, I like had to let go, because I'm also directing the film with my co-director. That's why I had a co-director. And I'm like, I have to run this. I literally can't worry about any logistics. Like, I'm gonna have to pray that y'all do this right. Like, goodbye.
It's that anxiety of organizing anything, like even a film festival. Like you can choose the best films, and then it's still up to the audience whether or not they show up. So when people do, you're just like, oh, thank God. And then add to that the social aspect that's being overlaid on an event like this. So you mentioned similar events took place in 11 other cities across the US.
Mhm.
And I was I was impressed with, the montage at the end. Like, you had cycling groups, you had rollerblading groups, skateboarding groups. Um, did you expect that sort of like variation, like when, or like, was that part of the design? And is that something that you'd like to maybe see like grow from this sort of atypical protest?
Yeah, so I originally I put out the call to everybody because I knew when I was saying it to people, like how crazy it sounds to someone who has only maybe ran like a mile, but people did like relays where they were like, they're like, this person will run a mile, this person will run 5 miles, because I just was like, as long as we're all in solidarity with the 50 miles, however you do it, I was like, I don't care. Like, if you run it, walk it, whatever. I just wanted people to recognize those 50 people, however they could recognize it. So to see people actually do that was so amazing and so beautiful. And I wish, it was very big, but I was like, oh my gosh, I wish so many more people could have seen and like understood, like, you don't have to run, just come do whatever you can,
Right.
it was no man left behind. Like, I mean, they were waiting for me because I was towards the end, I was like literally like dying, like, oh my God.
I found it very, very arresting and very moving, like having the names of the people that they were there to support, like on their person, and their photos. And I think you see that maybe sometimes in like cancer runs, if someone's running because they've lost someone to cancer. And I wonder if that's something that maybe protests in general should kind of
Mhm.
embrace, because placards are great, signs are great, standing up and speaking is great, but even just that human billboard aspect of like, this
Mhm.
is a person's name, this is a person's face, they were taken from us, recognize that.
I feel like it humanizes it more too, because people forget and they just, think like, oh, another, because sometimes we hear about it so much, it's just like, oh, another person. But when you see a photo, when you see a name, then people are like, oh my gosh, like, I think it also resonated with people, because they're like, this could have been my son, this could have been my brother, this could have been my best friend, because I had someone from my hometown whose brother was shot in a police brutality situation. And I'm like, what? Like, to know someone that close was all, I mean, he lived, thank God, but it was very jarring where I'm like, you really don't realize like this could be you tomorrow. And so I just think for people, it really humanizes it where you're like, this was like somebody who was living just maybe 2 days ago and now they're not here.
Yeah. In the film, there's a line, someone says that it's messed up that things like this have to happen just so that Black people can live. And I wonder, from personally, what's your like desired outcome from protests like this?
My biggest desired outcome is for someone, and to walk away and just realize like Black lives matter. We're not saying other people don't matter, but just know, because sometimes we have implicit biases where you don't even realize. And I'm not mad at people for having an implicit bias. You grew up that way, whatever the case may be. But if you don't acknowledge it, that's when it becomes an issue. And just acknowledging it and trying to fix it is, is half of the issue. And once you do that, then we can move on and like try and work together. So I just want people to realize like my life matters, your life matters. And also another thing is like a lot of people painted in the news, especially in New York, like these protests were going out of control. They were scary, like looting and robbing. I think that happened like 2 times out of the million that happened. And I was at a million of them and I never experienced that, so I just want people to see like you can actually go out on the street and get heard and get things to change. And things have changed. I feel like if we were silent, you know people would have just gone about their days like it would still be the same, that it would still be the same world,
Yeah.
but it is completely different now.
Yeah, it's the razor blade and the candy apple problem. Maybe it happens once, maybe it never happens, but then that's all people ever talk about, and then that overshadows the positive aspects of what you're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
It's terrible.
Absolutely.
um so in the film, you say that your mother gave you strength and now you're giving others strength, and your mother was clearly a powerful influence on you. What did her support mean for you then, and what does it continue to give you now?
Yeah, her support was a support like no one else's. You know, I always say my mom was my soulmate and I'll never find anyone like her. She was my best friend, you know, and I realized that when the more you love someone, the more it hurts when you lose them. And, you know, it's been 2 years, not 2 years, been a year and a half since I lost her, because I lost her in December of 2020. And it still feels like yesterday that it happened to me. And sometimes I wake up and I'm like, it's been a year and a half since she's been gone. And like, there's been times I want to give up, times like I'm just like, I don't care anymore. But I know that all the success that I have of this film, people seeing it across the world, is because of her. Literally, had she not said to me, make this into a documentary, I would have just had this footage and I probably would have done nothing with it. But, you know, after she passed away, I was like, it would literally be in vain for me. What would have all this been for if I didn't do something? So I'm so glad that I put it out, you know, and it was scary because I was like, what if I put this in all these film festivals and no one wants to watch it? Like, you know what I mean? I wasted all this time, you know,
Yeah.
but even, you know, I was like, even if one film festival picked it up, I was like, I did what I was supposed to do for her. So I'm very, very grateful.
It's an amazing film. What advice do you have for people who, one, are either looking to just get into activism, or put together something with a bit of scale like this?
Mhm. Um, One person can change the world. I used to never think that until I did this film.
Right.
And I was one person who woke up and was like, I mean, it's not easy, I'll tell you that, but I literally was one person. And whatever your idea may be, it's never too small, too big. Just if you can get one other person, then they get one other person, they get one other person. And I also want to say the power of social media. I know, you know, people have their thoughts, but in this case, it was what helped me do this and help me get seen. And you know, I really tell people now, like, one person can change the world, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, it's like I said, the film is great, and yeah, we're happy to show it. I have one last question for you, and it's, would you run 50 miles again?
um, I have run 50 miles again since that film.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is yes. Oh,
It was it easier the second time?
absolutely not. It was worse. It was worse. It was heartbreaking
Yeah.
worse.
Oh, Nattalyee, thank you so much for talking with us. We can't wait for the audience to see the film, and to feel the repercussions. And it's a great reminder that, especially here in Canada, the last little while, we've had a very negative experience with protests.
Mm.
And it's a great reminder that protests are a force for good when they're being directed in a good place, and the change is needed and deserved. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for the film, and for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.